Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining me. And today is a double dose of stories. Yes, you're getting two. And the first one, if you are a fan of Mr. Ballin, then you might have heard it first. But I'm not sure if this is the exact one that he told because there were two stories of it. I came across it, then I realized, yep, he told that. So I condensed it into a very small story. But I promise it's either a different one or it adds value at the end and wasn't told before. So with that being said, as of now, it's time to slip into a mind that's not our own. Let's go. On a regular, ordinary night, in the middle of the working week, a man woke up in bed feeling so hot that he thought he must have contracted a fast-developing fever. He had been fine when he'd gone to bed after an unremarkable day at work. He was just sweating profusely and just boiling hot, so he woke his wife up and explained to her how unwell he was feeling at that time. And his wife, urged him to let her call an ambulance for him. And while they waited for it to arrive, he told her that he was now getting very worried. I would say for a man especially to say that, because I've been in that situation before where, should I call the ambulance? This could be serious. Nah. Then another time I was like, yeah, this is serious. Call the ambulance. So whenever a guy is like, oh, I'm very worried, call an ambulance. I know that's stereotyping a little bit, but it's serious. And he told her that he wondered if this shockingly fast, feverish condition now had anything to do with what happened to him the day before. He worked at the British Broadcasting Corporation, more commonly referred to as the BBC. And he was a broadcast journalist. And specifically, he worked with the section of the BBC called the World Service, which still airs today and covers world news, in-depth reports from foreign correspondents all across the globe. But on the day before, September 7th, 1978, he had left home at the usual time and walked from the south side of the city across Waterloo Bridge, where he had waited as usual at his regular bus stop to catch a bus to take him to the BBC building in Portland Place, just off Regent Street in the center of London. And now, waiting for this ambulance to arrive, he told his wife that as he had been standing at the bus stop waiting for his bus to arrive, he had suddenly felt something sharp on the back of one of his legs, as though he had been bitten by something or stung by an insect. He turned around and something caught his eye. He noticed a man that was very close by, who was kind of like stooping down to pick up an umbrella from the ground. The man then moved fast and he crossed to the other side of the road where he jumped in a taxi. And he was rather disconcerted, but no worse off other than a stinging sensation in his leg, so the man said he continued on with his journey to work. Although when he arrived at the office, he went into the bathroom and saw that this area of his leg where the stinging was coming from now appeared to have this small red mark, as though his skin had actually been punctured. When the ambulance arrived for him in the early hours of the next morning, by the time he reached the hospital, his condition had begun to seriously worsen. So the emergency doctors, they ran these urgent tests attempting to figure out what was wrong with him. And they found, to their astonishment, that his red blood count was the highest that they have ever seen. This made it clear to them that something very serious was happening to his body. And in fact, within 72 hours, the man was dead. He had died of ricin poisoning, which had been administered through the end of that umbrella that the stranger at the bus stop had stabbed him in the leg with. A pellet was actually found embedded in his leg, and the man who died was called Georgi Markov. and he was a Bulgarian dissident and a very outspoken critic of the communist regime in his homeland. So hundreds of London taxi drivers were later interviewed about whether they may or may not have been the driver who gave the ride to the man with the umbrella. And at this very moment, Rihanna actually was seen on site, and she said, if you subscribe right now to Mr. E Files, you can stand under my umbrella. Ella, eh? And although the police would not release any information at the time, it was later established that they had discovered that whoever the man was, he had a thick foreign accent. So Scotland Yard detectives flew to Bulgaria to investigate, but they found their progress severely hampered by the suspicious loss of files that they wished to access to enable their research into who could have been behind the assassination. And in 2005, claims were made that according to secret leaked Bulgarian intelligence files, the umbrella assassin was called Agent Piccadilly, and he was alleged to have worked for the communist-era Državna Sigurnost, the state security. In one of the files, a report on the assassin said, he does not feel fear. While this case is perhaps well known to the older generations of the British, what perhaps is lesser known is that there seems to have been a very similar incident as recently as 2011 in Hanover. German newspapers reported that a 40-year-old man had died after being stabbed in the back by an unknown man who had been carrying an umbrella. But this time, it had been mercury that was injected into the man's body, and it fatally poisoned him. In this case, the poison was slower to take effect, but it proved just as deadly in the end. It was agony. It literally took the man months to die, but it was still inevitable and unpreventable. The only description of the man who had been carrying the umbrella, according to eyewitnesses, was that he was slim. So was it the same agent who does not feel fear, or another? For this second story, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to get up to at least 30 likes in this video. So if you can hit the like button right now, that would be awesome. And if you get to 30 likes, I will be releasing a story tomorrow as well. And don't forget to find the hidden clue that's hidden throughout the story. Put what it is with the timestamp in the comments. But like I said, I also want you guys to comment right now if you knew this. In fact, I want you to take a guess. Do you know how many people in the world go missing each year? Right now in the comments, write your answer. I'll wait. Alright, I'm guessing some people said thousands, other people said hundreds of thousands, some people might even say millions. And the people that say millions would be close, because 8 million people each year go missing. On October 21st, 1978, a man would disappear. But the story is not as simple as just him vanishing. An extra element is added because of his self-confessed enthusiasm for flying saucers, aka UFOs. Australian pilot Frederick Valentich disappeared in Australia at just 20 years of age, and he vanished over Australia's Bass Strait. And he was conducting a 100-mile journey in his Cessna 182L in order to, practice some maneuvers he had been taught by his flight instructor. So basically, it was a training flight that would teach him more about his Cessna light aircraft. Okay, so when he was making his last known transmission, it is this fascination which lingers all over the case. On the day that he disappeared, he was flying, like I said, over the Bass Strait at 6 minutes past 7 o'clock. And from there, he got on his radio and contacted flight control at Melbourne. And he wanted to report an unidentified flying object. Such was an unknown aircraft that had began to follow him. It was a large vehicle with 4 flashing lights strung along its side. Valentich named these landing lights. Though unable to suggest the type of aircraft to flight control, it had passed just 300 meters above him, moving at a startling speed. Valentich then continued to report his situation to the radio operator. So he gets back on the radio and he told the operator that the pilot of the other aircraft was trying to toy with him, moving towards him at a very high speed and beginning to orbit his aircraft. From here, Valentich could see the machine's shining surface with its glowing green light, and at this point he began to worry out loud, and he was mainly concerned about his engine. So the radio operator asked Valentich to identify the other flyer, to which he replied, it's not an aircraft. Then, halfway through his last transmission, the voice cut out, and the radio operator heard only what he identified as metallic scraping noises. Then, all contact with Valentich vanished, and an immediate investigation was carried out by Australia's Department of Transport. And over the course of their findings, they were unable to ascertain exactly what had caused Valentich's flight to lose contact, but did presume that the results were fatal. And very strangely, at that time, no wreckage was found, and no one was able to report a crash site pertaining to Valentich's flight. Nothing was found until 5 years after the event. And that's when the flap from an engine was supposedly found on the shore of Flinders Island. It was identified as the same as the type found on Valentich's Cessna 182, lying within the range of serial numbers that matched his plane. So basically, it could have been, but also it wasn't an exact match. Despite this, they were unable to say for certain whether this was the exact cow flap, meaning there was no definitive evidence. Now, due to the nature of the disappearance of Frederick Valentich, the event which led to his vanishing prompted a great deal of interest from beyond the Australian border. One oddity discovered was that the fuel aboard his flight should have been able to carry him over 800 kilometers. But despite this, there is no record of his flight at any point on the radar of his presumed path, suggesting that he may have been drastically off course. There's even a report from police in Melbourne suggesting that a small airplane made an unexplained landing not far from Valentich's suggested route at around the same time. But again, nothing has been confirmed. One theory suggests that Valentich may have been flying upside down, having become disoriented during the flight. This would explain the sights that he thought he saw, the green lights being his own aircraft reflected from the water, and the strange movements being his own interactions with his reflection. The radio operator would have heard him crashing into the sea. But then, of course, there was the theory that he was taken by a UFO. Most people usually dismiss this right off the bat because they don't want to think it's possible, or they don't think it's possible. But a group of extraterrestrial enthusiasts from Phoenix, Arizona, have claimed to match photographs taken from a nearby person to the event. Photos which depict the kind of fast-moving, green-lighted object which Valentich claims to have seen at that same time. But, as with all the more outlandish theories, compelling evidence is still being sought. For those of you that wish to find the truth, the story of Frederick Valentich offers little in the way that would satisfy answers. But for a UFO enthusiast to perish in circumstances such as these might seem strange, but his name will now simply be added to the millions that go missing each year. And just in case you were wondering, I had to double check this 8 million people missing every year figure, and it seems that just from the United States alone, in between 600,000 and 900,000 people go missing every year. But it also says right here, and this was from 2012, so if anything, it's only gone up, and this was from the Wall Street Journal, that it's estimated that some 8 million children go missing around the world each year. So at the beginning, when I said 8 million, that could be just children. We actually could be looking at a number that's much closer to 10 million or higher in reality. Well, guys, I hope you either enjoyed these stories or maybe you learned something new. Either way, if you liked any part of this at all, please like this video. It's free and it absolutely helps me out a lot. I appreciate all of you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.